Hello, I'm Jeremy Uden. I'm Head of Conservation at the Pitt Rivers Museum. I have quite a lot of slides, I apologise. So our project was called Plastic Fantastic. It's about replicating historic musical instruments at the Pitt Rivers. We came up with this idea because we have lots of historically and culturally important instruments at the Pitt Rivers. We have a collection of about 6,000 instruments. 6,000 instruments. We are quite often asked by members of originating communities if our instruments can be played. Often they've been stored in hot, dry conditions. They're also possibly covered in pesticides. So for a number of reasons, we have to say no. We have a non-playing collection. But people often say to us, you should just have a 3D model made and that will solve the problem. So we wanted to find out whether it would. So we needed a playable instrument to scan and replicate. We were lucky enough to get permission to use an instrument from the Bate Collection. We chose an ivory recorder because quite a lot of our instruments are made from bone and ivory, so it was a similar material. So this is a recorder made by Goddard of London in about 1700. It's not in perfect condition, and again, most of our instruments aren't in perfect condition, so it seemed like a good choice. A recorder also handily breaks down into smaller pieces, and the CT scanner we used at Cranfield is quite small, so that was very handy. Even so, the size of the scanner at Cranfield is only 12 centimetres, so things like the mouthpiece had to be scanned in 2 sections and digitally stitched back together before they were printed. What we hadn't quite anticipated is that a recorder is actually quite a complicated instrument. So here you can see the windway, and inside is a wooden block, and the shape of that block is really crucial to controlling the sound and the playability of the recorder. Here you can see an end-on view, and you can see the block in the ivory recorder. It looks quite chewed, for want of a better word. So it was really important for us that our replica was also quite chewed, so that we could accurately decide whether any of the replicas sounded anything like the original. Things like the drill marks down the middle of the recorder are also important in how the air moves inside it and what the sound quality of the original instrument is like. So we wanted to replicate features like this as well. At Cranfield, we mounted parts of the recorder on low-density foam. Here's their micro CT scanner. Unlike a medical CT scanner, the object moves and the X-ray source stays stationary. Here's the mouthpiece being scanned, and here's some of the X-rays being generated. The X-rays are then built up to provide a very high-resolution 3D model. So here's the model of the mouthpiece. Here's the mouthpiece being scanned, and the X-rays often reveal features that you can't actually see physically looking at it, like the large cracks running down the mouthpiece. And again, these are important to replicate in our replicas to provide an accurate comparison between the replicas and the original. These are the kind of the data that you can get out from the CT scan. It's quite hard to see, but there is. The wooden block hasn't actually scanned particularly well compared to the ivory. This is the actual wooden block from the recorder. It's made from a really low density wood. Traditionally pencil cedar is used. This block has also been attacked by woodworm, which caused further issues in terms of the density of the wood. So what we actually got out when we separated the wooden block file from the ivory recorder was a huge file containing all of the kind of internal structure of the wood, and it took a very powerful computer quite a long time to actually try and form a printable file. When we did, it was too big for a desktop computer to handle, and this was the print that we got out, so not ideal. Our colleagues in engineering science, who've done quite a lot of work with us in this project, then used CAD to actually build a model of the block based on measurements, and then printed it out for us. But comparison with the original shows that there are actually quite a lot of differences. We had to do quite a lot of work to the CAD version to actually make it work, to actually get a playable recorder with this block. We had to do quite a lot of filling, a lot of sanding down. We started experimenting with wooden blocks, carving them ourselves. That's not what we wanted. What we wanted was to just print a replica play it and compare it to the original without any post-processing. At that point, we actually discovered that the block of the original recorder came out, which we didn't know before. So we went back to Cranfield, scanned the original block at a lower resolution, and then a company called Polygonica donated software to our colleagues in engineering science so that they could effectively shrink wrap the file so that we just got the surface features, removing all of that structural information inside, because it really is just the shape of the block that's important in determining the sound. Here's the printable file that we got out, and this is the first print, which you can see is a lot more similar to the original block. Once we'd done that, we could just slot the block into the recorder without any processing at all, and we then had a playable instrument. We printed out 6 replicas in various materials using various printers, and we can tell you more about the printers and the materials that we used if you come to our stand. We then had a couple of assessments, one with the public who voted on which one they thought sounded most like the original. The Bate kindly let the original be played, although it is in quite fragile condition. And then we then had a session with our colleagues in the music faculty and engineering science were also there, where 2 professional recorder players played the original and the replicas. The results are broadly that there are 2 different experiences, whether you're a listener or a player. If you're a listener, it is possible to make a replica which sounds almost identical to the original. If you're playing them, there are quite obvious differences in terms of the feel, the taste, various factors to do with the instrument. What we hope to do in the future is to work with originating communities. I mean, what I should say is that this project is not about recorders. It's about trying to make an instrument which sounds like the original. So we want to work more with originating communities and see whether replicas are useful for them. So we approached it first by seeing whether it were possible to make a replica that sounds like the original, and it is, if you're a listener. But whether someone from a Maori community actually sees that as a viable alternative to playing the original is the next step of the project.